We are back, baby! This is the official podcast of Hockey Royalty Live. We're talking about the Jordan Spence contract. How do fans feel about this team going forward? Get in the chat, like and subscribe. You know what to do. Let's go. Welcome in, fans. That intro was brought to you by Ezera. Their new album's out now on anywhere you can listen to music. They have a tour in California, so go out. If you want to listen to some heavy rock music, go out there and headbang, get in the pit. You know, elbow same things up, get some hockey fights going. Then go check them out. But appreciate you guys listening in, our fans. We've missed you guys. I know we're in our off season. And all the diehards are going to be in here tonight, eventually getting in here. But before we get into the topics, you know, I gotta reconnect with my bros, man. The Triumphant is back together. Russ, Joe, how are you guys doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It's been nice to have this like break from hockey. Like the last few weeks, I just told myself like I'm just going to totally exclude myself from anything hockey related, and it's been nice. But now I'm starting to get the itch again. I'm feeling it. I can sense it coming. I feel like we're like a little over 5 weeks away from the rookie tournament in LA. So it's still a little ways, but it's not too far around.
Yeah. I like you. Like I've taken like an intentional break. Like I just and I think this happens to me. Like I get really like I shut off for a while in the summertime for hockey, and then come winter time, because I'm a big baseball guy, big fantasy baseball guy. Totally shut baseball off in the winter. Like you'd think it's like a totally just foreign sport to me. And then I'm all in come like March. So it's just, I go through this in cycles, and it's probably healthy to take a little bit of a break. And then every so often, you know, there's a tweet that comes out and, you know, Colorado signs another defenseman I like. So I want to pick up my phone and throw it at the window. And then that's the extent of it. But no, other than that, trying to enjoy taking a break from hockey. Although I was telling Randy a little bit before, we're doing the high school team, little mini like summer, a handful of scrimmages. So just nice to be back at the rink again, get around the guys again. So that definitely helps, like get that itch a little bit as we get a little bit closer and the summer starts to come to an end. So good stuff though. Brandon, how you doing?
I'm doing good, but before I get into me, let's get into our fans here. Dan P, glad you guys are back. Hurry up, hockey season. We agree. Gwen, I miss hockey, and some freaking out emoji. I can't really tell for this small of a screen there. Anthony is saying, why did I miss you guys more than hockey? Because we missed you guys.
Right back at you, Anthony.
And we were debating even doing this podcast. Like Jordan Spence, we knew he was going to get signed, but we missed you guys. So we're going to come on for right now our 10 live viewers. We're hoping to get more coming in. We know it's the off season. We're feeling you, man. We want to go out there and have those street tacos and be by the beach and all that kind of stuff like that. But we're coming on here just to reconnect for a little bit before we go to the hard stretch of the season. I've been filled up with Olympic news. Dude, I've been watching every single day, watching the Gold Zone on Peacock. I'm learning up on these events. I'm telling my brother, like, hey, this fencing chick is legit. And like, I've never watched fencing, period. I watched a 5-minute video on what fencing is and how things go on. Nice. And I'm like texting him like, dude, this chick is legit, blah, blah, blah. Like in our team, this and this, that. And we're watching. And then it's like, oh, shot put. We have 3 of the top 5 people ranked in the world. And this guy is like 6'7", 340. And he's chucking this ball this far. And do you know a shot put ball is 16 pounds?
I was wondering how heavy that was when I was watching that. And I was wondering.
That's a big bowling ball, and 23 meters is what he threw that shit. Sorry, pardon my French.
It warranted.
I'm just amazed. Like you watched the girl from Egypt, scored bronze in the fencing. She was 7 months pregnant. Like,
Wow.
Yes, I saw that story.
all kinds of stuff. Like this 14-year-old dove for China just to pay for rent for her mom. Like all kinds of weird stuff coming out. Like the first gold medal ever for Italy in any sort of gymnastic event was made, and they were all crying and stuff like that. And the Turkish sniper, like he had like at 25 meters, he's like, I don't need stuff, I just care. And then in the interview with his home country, he's like, I just hope my ex-wife gives me back my cat. Like this Olympic Games has been fantastic. Like I've been so enthralled with everything, not only for the United States, but all kinds of stuff, you know. And like the guy, like the Swedish pole vaulter, like already won the event. And then he's like, no, I want to break the Olympic record. I want to break my own record. So everybody just watched him jump by himself for over an hour for him to break the record. And it was just, it was fantastic. I just like sports and what it does to people. And like you watching somebody do things for the first time. You looked at the outdoor cycling chick, I forget her name. She wasn't even on the event until the day before. Her teammate dropped out. The outdoor, like the track, not the track, but the outdoor cycling.
Yep.
And the day before, she's like, yeah, I'll do it. Gold medal. And she wasn't even a cycler until like 8 years ago.
Wow. Incredible.
She was a rower in college. And she's like, yeah, I'll pick up biking because it sounds good because I'm near Central Park. And that was her introduction to it. And she roasted these people that were generational talents.
Oh my God.
Like I love sports. I love what it does to people. I love rooting for people who are the underdogs. I love the fact that so many millionaires are backing women's sports coming out of the Olympics. Rugby team gets bronze. I think her name is Michelle Chan or Yen or something like that. Pardon if I got her name wrong, but donated $4 million to the rugby team, $1 million per year over the next 4 years. So they get gold. You got Flavor Flav over there just throwing out money from the 80s and 90s.
Snoop Dogg is there as
that
like
he has
mascot.
Yeah. So it's just phenomenal. And I really love it because it's just, I get to learn about more sports that I know nothing about. I get to root for people who are day-to-day citizens. Everybody on the water polo team for the United States has multiple jobs.
Love water polo, by the way.
They get paid nothing, you know? And so it's just really awesome to root for people who make little to nothing and are doing this genuinely for their sport and for the love of the game for the most part. And, you know, I just think it's a breath of fresh air for sport watching, because I've given up on baseball with no A's, and football's right around the corner and hockey's right around the corner. So it was really something that injected some much needed like fandom into my heart. So every day I'm watching on my little iPhone right at my desk, making phone calls. And I'm like, yeah, this pole vaulter who I've never even met cleared 5.5. Let's go. I'm getting up out of my chair, like fist pumping and stuff. So it's been great.
I think this summer it's been so much better. Like obviously we're huge hockey fans, but like, and then so when the summer comes around, it's like, all right, like baseball. It's like usually all we have. But I think we talked about this a little bit in the last pod. It's like summer came around. Oh, and then we got the Euros and Copa America. And that was so fun to watch. And now we've had the Olympics for these last few weeks. And I'm with you, Brandon. I've been watching everything. Like I watched the water polo today, the shootout. I didn't know there were shootouts in water polo, which is so fun. I was like, holy hell, they're doing a shootout against Australia, and they ended up winning. It's the first time in a medal round since 2008 I saw, which is great for the men's water polo team.
It's like the goalie like shakes his legs really fast and gets up, and he's like just shaking
the one
around.
save he made was like with his head, and I'm like, holy God, probably has a pounding headache after that. But that was great. But I think the one you mentioned that I've been so enamored with was the women's rugby team. That it was so early in the Olympics last week or so. Feels like every day is like so long, but that bronze medal game, I was been watching because Alona Mar, she's been so popular on social media. She's been such a great ambassador for women's rugby and kind of growing that game. So I was watching this game mostly because of her, but because I wanted to learn more about rugby. And sure enough, that bronze medal game, I don't know if you guys saw the replay. If you haven't, you should go watch it. I mean, she pretty much ran the entire field on the last play of the game to win the bronze medal.
That was her teammate. That was her
teammate. Or her teammate, sorry, yeah. I forget her name, but yeah, it was an incredible play.
Yeah. And
it was like, man, that's so cool. And the way they were celebrating, yeah. But just overall, the Olympics have been so much fun to watch, and it just makes me so excited for the Winter Games coming up soon.
Yeah, it's a blast. I haven't watched as much as I usually do, but I love watching the swimming. And I'm telling you right now, I cannot get enough. And I know they haven't been like dominant performances, but the U.S. women's soccer team is playing in the gold medal game this weekend. I cannot get enough of Mel Swanson, Trinity Rodman, and Sophia Smith. They are so freaking good. I mean, the pass that Swanson had to now is it Smith or Rodman? I think it was Smith. It was Smith. Yeah, just because Rodman had the winner in the quarterfinal. Just incredibly weighted ball that late into the game. There was an extra time. I love watching those three, and the women's game has just gotten so much more competitive over the years. So it's a lot more. It's awesome, and those three are freaking awesome. I love watching them. The one thing I have a question. I was thinking about this the other day because I didn't even watch it, but I happened to see it like scrolling. Why do they have 3-on-3 basketball? They have regular basketball.
They had it in Tokyo.
Yeah, it's the second time, and I think it's just because it's like it reminds people of the street basketball. So like you only have to take it out to the 3-point line. You know, like it's never ending movement. So like if somebody makes a point, if your team picks it up and throws it out and they clear it, then you can start again. So it's just never ending.
Because I was a little confused. I'm like, we have regular basketball. I didn't know there was, but okay.
So do you know who's on the men's team? I don't know if you're familiar with the name Jimmer Fredette.
No. Oh yeah.
Jimmer Fredette, number 35. He's like 35 years old. They didn't medal or anything, but like every once in a while,
they got roasted. They were like 2 and 5.
It's like one of the later sports on over in France, and it's kind of strange because like we send the men's NBA, like it's all NBA players, obviously, but for the 3-on-3, they don't send any NBA players. It's all like Rick Barry's son who's out there doing underhand. He's doing Granny Smith free throws for 3-on-3 basketball. But yeah, they weren't really that good or whatever. But I know the women's team got bronze, I believe. But
well, the women's team sent ex WNBA players and college elites. So like, you know, to me it was unentertaining. Like I liked like archery was fantastic, and like you look at like stuff like the 25 meter pistol, the 10-point ring is the size of a period in your essays. Like that's crazy. And that's why most people have like gyroscopes. That's why the person from Turkey was like got his hand in his pocket and he was just like, yeah, that sounds good. Boom. I think Turkey just sent an assassin, and that's what's going on. But like kayak slalom was great. Like it's like almost battling in a kayak on the river. Great sport. So, you know, we'll see.
I will say,
we'll see some good stuff. And then for LA fans, I mean, that's where the Olympics are going next. Yeah. You got 6 sports that are going to be different. I think, or 8, 6. I think 6 or 8. Anyways, baseball's coming back. Softball's coming back. You got flag football for the first time ever. You also got squash for the first time ever. All you squash fans. Okay. They're bringing back cricket. Cricket hasn't been played in the Olympics since the early 1900s because cricket used to be a 5-day event, right? And they couldn't do that in the Olympics. Now they're doing in India, they do a fast version.
The T20s.
Yeah, the T20s, yeah. So they're bringing that to the Olympics, which will be huge because there's so many cricket fans. So that's going to be massive. And then they're bringing lacrosse back for the first time since like 1920, I believe. So a lot of great team sports going to be played in LA. And so I'm excited. And I think that it's just so fun if you just like watching stuff. And I got to give my tip the cap to Peacock. Like if you want to watch an event it's on the event. Like you can literally just press it like, hey, I want to watch this specific match right now. Boom, you can watch it at any time. And
the app is great. Everything's scheduled there. Like you said, the TV app, whatever, the streaming app with like the multi-view, and then I can go to each one. And yeah, it's been. I know they've gotten knocked.
Or you can watch the Gold Zone, and you're like, hey, this. In the beginning of the Olympics, Gold Zone had 16 sports playing at once. Like they were just like, hey, we're gonna go to here, we're gonna go to here, we're gonna go to here. Like, great, all right, awesome. And then their website, the Olympic website, each sport has like a 5-minute video on how the sport is graded. How you can watch it. So like when I was watching fencing, like now I know the difference between epee and foil and saber and how you score points. And like, so, you know, it's just crazy. I think it's just been so well done. I know there was a lot of conflict in the beginning, and we're not a political podcast, so we're not going to get into that BS, but the sport aspect has been done excellent. And the viewing for people who want to watch the Olympics has been done excellent. And the NHL should take note, because there's no way that people around the globe shouldn't be able to watch the LA Kings, and we should have an app and be able to pay for certain things. So take note there.
Mhm.
But we're going to get in deep into our favorite son, Jordan Spence here. Gets a new contract. Clap it up for Jordan Spence right there. Signs a 2-year, $3 million deal, 1.5 per. Holding your boy out to the end of the 25-26 season. We knew this was coming. We didn't know where it was going to be. Obviously, we believe in Jordan Spence. We think he's probably closer to that $3 million range type defenseman. So King's got a bargain here. I think maybe Spence is saying, hey, I know it's coming up. You know, me and Brant Clark are the future. I can get paid at a heavy amount in 2 years. So let's take a team deal. But I'm excited. I'm interested to hear how you guys think. Joe, this is your boy. What do you think about that contract?
I mean, it's a steal from a money standpoint. He's going to far exceed that, I think, pretty quickly. I mean, I'm always going to be, I want to sign these guys as long as possible, but I also acknowledge like that's not always realistic or always possible. So I get that. But looking at it just strictly from a money standpoint, it's an absolute steal, a bargain, and I think he has the opportunity to really flourish. I mean, I think we expect his role to be bigger. He should see even more power play time. I think he's going to see. I know he pretty much manned PP2 last year. He should do at least that this year. Probably an opportunity for more 5-on-5 minutes. He's got a hell of a ceiling. So we should all be very excited. And for the short term, it's an incredible value deal. I suspect that this is going to be a player that I won't be surprised if he's an $8 to $9 million defenseman in a couple of years. I think he's great.
I like it.
Russ, I mean, I think obviously we've had conversations about the left side of the defense and how they view the defensive realm having playmakers with a stalwart defenseman. But just in his own right, Jordan Spence has proven time and time again he's a reliable defenseman, not only on the offensive side, but the defensive side. Where do you view his cap this season, like as far as playing? Do you think he's going to be power play 2? Do you think that he is going to compete with Brant Clark? Do you think it's just he's going to be a solid defenseman no matter where we play him?
Yeah, I think just in terms of 5-on-5, I would expect him just to go right into the role where Matt Roy is. I mean, as much as we love the potential and the ceiling of what Brant Clark can be in the NHL, he's still got to grow into that position. I mean, a lot of people probably would just say, hey, yeah, just still throw him out there. But Jordan Spence has earned the opportunity to keep playing in the position he's in and play in the position that Matt Roy was playing in before him. So I think a Spence-Gavrikov pairing would do pretty well. It's not the worst thing. I mean, I guess it's really only him or Edmondson at that point. But those two have put up pretty good numbers. I mean, just looking at some of the analytics between those in the small sample that they've played. So I'm pretty excited with that aspect. But the one that you guys both mentioned is the power play. That's going to be the one area where I'm curious to see where Hiller and co play Spence and Clark and how they deploy those two. Will they both be on power play 2? Will Clark get us a chance on power play 1, which I wouldn't be opposed to? I mean, he's probably one of your better skilled players on the roster at this point. If he gets the chance with open ice, I mean, put him out there. So, and then you give Jordan Spence the opportunity to quarterback PP2. So that'll be the big question mark, because I don't think it'd be surprising at all for Jordan Spence to go right in and play top 4 minutes, and then you kind of mix and match with Brant Clark, see how things go. We saw at times toward the end of the game that Jim Hiller was more than willing to pair Jordan Spence with Drew Doughty to try to create a little bit more offensive scoring chances. So maybe we see that a little bit more. Maybe we see him paired up with Doughty or even Brant Clark at times, which that sounds like a lot of fun to me. So I don't know. I'm curious to see like what the deployment is, not only for Jordan Spence, but for his, I guess, his battle mate now in Brant Clark looking for playing time.
Yeah, and talking about the power play, Travis Yost of TSN just had an article the other day about how, I think he worded it something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing, but check out his articles. It was the effect of the days of a power play being like really good and just being a luxury are gone. Like, you have a good power play now is a differentiator in the game. And that includes playoffs. And so that's an area where the Kings have been a little inconsistent. I mean, when Hiller took over a couple of years ago, obviously they had a great run there. They were in the top 5 for most of the season. I think they finished top 5 or at least top 10. Then last year got better as it went along, but certainly some rocky moments. And I think, as much as I'm not. I don't want to be one of these guys, because there's a lot of people that don't think Doughty has a place anymore on the power play. I don't know if I'm going to go there, but what I will say is I just don't think the big slapper from the point is high percentage, and that is his bread and butter. And he had a good year last year in doing so.
But I will contradict you there, and we've talked about this too. Why not put 2 defensemen? I mean,
so I think
like Spence, Clark, and Doughty are all in the top 10 guys on the lineup, offensive guys. So if you could put Brent Clark, who's a facilitator, and his shot can get through the weeds, and then he can also pass to Doughty, who can play on the half wall. I think that could be something that the team, and then let Spence run the second power play.
It could be. I mean, my guess is that Doughty's going to stay on power play 1. Just I don't know that there's a scenario where a healthy Doughty, coming off a pretty good year, by the way, it's not as if he wasn't productive. So I think he continues
power play 1 on the half wall.
Well, but I think he stays quarterbacking. To your point, though, and I think this is kind of what Russ was maybe getting at. All 3 of these guys need to play power play. Jordan Spence and Brant Clark need to be on the same power play. Again, I'm assuming Doughty mans power play 1. Then Spence, he's got a big shot. He can be on the half wall / left circle in a 1-3-1, however you want to put it. And I like the way Clark walks the line, the way Clark moves laterally, the way Clark gets kind of wristers off from the point and more seeing eye. I like that from up top rather than somebody just head down and wiring him. I like his creativity. So I would love him up at the top there on power play 2 if that's what they decide to do. But however they decide to work those, I think Doughty has certainly earned staying up top on power play 1. But if things struggle, like at some point they may need to just get a different look in there. But they've got capable options that they haven't always had in the past. I mean, we've seen times where Matt Roy, love him, but he's been on, running power play 2 at times, and that's a couple of years, but this just wasn't in his style, right? It's just not his game. So now they're well equipped to really run 2 pretty good units out there if they wanted to.
Russ, we have been known to be disappointed with the lineup adjustments of recent teams. So if there's an odd man out in the power play, do you think it's Jordan Spence? Do you think it's Brent Clark? How do you feel about the team's view of these players?
Oh man. I don't know, actually. If there is an odd man out, which very well could be, unless the coaching staff hasn't shown a willingness to play 3 defensemen at all in power play. So I guess it'd be
their defense. They haven't really had
the
people to do it, but you're right. Fair.
Yeah. But yeah,
they have more skilled players than some people on this team, and they've declined to play them. So
yeah. So I wouldn't say I'd be surprised to see all 3 of them, but I would say that would be like, okay, like maybe this team really is diving into like this uncomfortability they've been talking about, where they really want to put out the skilled players and give them the actual chance to succeed. Like for Brant Clark, I think Brant Clark and Drew Doughty should be on power play 1, and I just give Jordan Spence power play 2, because Brant Clark, he's probably the most skilled defenseman the Kings have on the roster. I don't think that's that shocking to say. Like you look at some of the things he's made, just let alone in the AHL, but even in the small sample size in the NHL, I mean, we haven't seen Drew Doughty do something like that in years. And I think Drew Doughty gets a knock, not only for his play, but because everybody hears Drew Doughty and they just automatically tie his contract to it, which it's terrible. It's not great to have what he's getting paid at $11 million, but he's still, like Joe said, he still had a really good season. So he deserves the opportunity to be the number one defenseman for the Kings next year. But as far as the power play goes, and the three defensemen that we're talking about, all three of them need to be on that power play, on at least both power play units. And wherever you play them, whether it's Brant Clark with Jordan Spence and Drew Doughty on top, or Brant Clark at top and maybe even Jordan Spence on top, and Brant Clark gets his own power play unit to run, I'm cool with that. But as long as all three of them are on the power play, yeah, that works for me.
Because like we've talked about how that second unit, it starts to get thin up front. Like they've got a lot of good 5-on-5 forwards, but they're missing. We've talked about this, how they're missing that high end talent up top, and they refuse to bring anything in the back end on the left side. But they have grown 3 defensemen, homegrown, that they have, and they should use them on the right side and use them on the power play, because like I love Phil Deneau. I don't know that he needs to be on the power play at this point, right?
I know that. Maybe you don't, but I know that.
But you know what I mean? Like I just don't think that.
I think that Todd McClellan and Rob Blake view reliability in 5-on-5 is the same as reliability on the power play, and they're not the same. They're different situations. They're different constructs.
Agreed.
And so I think that you need to take more risk on the power play. You need to put more offensive players in there. Who cares if Brant Clark, who isn't defensively sound, quote unquote, tries to make a play and then the puck comes off his stick and we give up a shorthanded goal? Like, how prevalent is that on a year-long basis, when he might supply way more offense and will supply way more offense in that situation? So we'll see how they view it. I hope they view it, as a plus, just as I hope you guys view this plus. Our shirts were on a discount. Jordan Spence contract, getting those shirts for cheaper here. Let Kev be Kev. $20, barely over cost. Going with the deep discount sizes, small through XXL, and the more Kev combo for $38. DM NHL Russell on his Twitter. Code word Spence. So if you get the code word right there, getting that discount. We accept Venmo or any other cash apps. Get that t-shirt while you wait. I think that Jordan Spence, though, is the type of guy that is a value who could help the team win now. I think he could be a stalwart for this team in the future. He's just I think that he's very underrated nationally too. So it'll be interesting what this team looks like and how they view him from not only where he sits in the pecking order, but the power play.
Well, I mean, look where he came from too. He's a 4th round pick, come from the Q, and his first pro year, he's quarterbacking the first power play unit for the Kings in a playoff game because Drew Doughty's hurt. So it's like he's kind of grown and had this, I don't want to say it's chip on his shoulder, but I mean, we talk about Brant Clark so much and even Drew Doughty at times on the top unit, but it seems like Jordan Spence is always the kind of the lost man, like kind of lost in the shuffle that we forget about, even though his numbers are always so good. And he was just handcuffed with this ball and chain and Andreas England all year last year. Yeah. So I feel like we haven't seen close to what the ceiling I feel like could be for Jordan Spence. And I'm excited for it. I feel like there's so much more that we can get out of him.
Also, we did the January back and forth with him and Clark. Right?
Yeah,
which was unbelievably
stupid. It was stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll say it. It was stupid. I was going to try to be nice, but fuck it. It's August 7th. Pardon my French.
Yeah. Pardon our French. Pardon my French. Our sponsors.
Yeah. Real quick on that though, there is a person. I'm a follower of Michael Clifford. Writes for EP Ringside. He writes for a couple other things too. Dauber Hockey, I think, is another one. He does a lot of analytical and kind of analysis in that sense. He was the one guy, and he's not like a big TSN or well-known ESPN guy or anything like that, but he was one guy that was just pounding the Jordan Spence table throughout the year and was literally just laughing on Twitter when he was out of the lineup when they were doing the rotating with Clark. So there are people that are like, what are they doing playing Spence with Andreas Englund, and then holy crap, they're not even playing him. He's been one of their best defensemen this season. On what planet is this making any sense? So you're right, Randon, that he probably is underrated because there's not many of those, but they do exist about how good this kid is. And hopefully we see him get utilized and play in a much bigger role this year. That would be he's earned it. I mean, I'm not one that thinks Clark should be playing top 4 right now. I mean, because Jordan Spence is really good. I don't think there's a need. I don't think they have to force him. I think they can ease Clark. I think they should have eased Clark in last year on the third pair, but that's beside the point. I think they can do that again this year. And kind of he can do what Spence did last year. It's maybe not ideal timeline wise because I think they burned a year doing this, but you can still do that, I guess, right now this year while giving them both opportunities on the power play.
I think a little bit differently, and I know that would be conversation for camp and all that kind of stuff like that, but we're here, like it's not quite tinfoil, but we'll get there. I think that Brent Clark needs to be on the second line with Gavrikov.
Interesting.
Because I think that the Kings are essentially a playoff team. We all think they'll be a playoff team or verge of. Like, why not give Clark that first month? Because if he is what you drafted him to be, then he'll be better than Spence. And then you're not wasting time with him playing lower level minutes, 10 minutes a night, 12 minutes a night on the third pair. And he will earn that top minute duty that you expect him to have with the draft capital. So, and if not, then you could say, hey, he's not ready. And then we can switch them. Like there's no downside to the team for that. There's no downside to the player. Hey, Brent Clark, we thought you were doing this. You're not doing that. Well, we're going to put you down. We're going to put Jordan Spence up. He's proven himself, yada, yada, everything. Everybody is going to understand that move. But if Brent Clark earns those minutes and moves up with Gavrikov and is dominating, that's what you draft him to be. And I think if you start him on the third line or third pair and you limit his minutes and limp him along like you've been doing, like you could stifle what he could be. Because we're right around that young age. Like there's more and more defensemen, more and more forwards who are becoming themselves at a young age. Mm-hmm. And you look at Quinn Hughes, like he's young.
Yep.
Like he was drafted in the same tier as Brent Clark. So why are we not allowing him to play at that level and allowing him to earn his minutes at the level? Worst case scenario, he goes back and plays with Joel Edmondson for 10 minutes a night. But if he earns that, maybe he goes up. Maybe he just stays as a solid 17-minute defenseman, 20-minute defenseman a night, power play 1, and he's like, man, Brent Clark is hockey Jesus, like I thought he was, So I think that it's a thing where, I like Jordan Spence, and I know that he can do these things, but on a team, I'd rather have Brent Clark try to earn his level of ceiling. And then if it doesn't work out by November, hey, switch it up because Spence has done that. That's how I kind of feel about it.
I think what we kind of get lost in all this is the coach now that's behind the bench and his willingness to just mix and match like everything throughout the game. I would like just when I went back and talked about the him putting Jordan Spence up with Drew Doughty at times. Like maybe you give Brent Clark the opportunity and give him the chance to play with Drew Doughty in certain situations where it's like, okay, we're really looking to score here, or even just like an offensive zone faceoff after like a long icing shift. Put Brent Clark and Drew Doughty out there together, and then you have Jordan Spence and Gavrikov to back them up. Like that's where Drew Hiller needs to really kind of showcase his willingness to put the best players he can in the best situations to succeed. Like Joe always says, like you want to limit your upside by what do you say, Joe? You limit your upside by, I don't know, whatever. But yeah,
I forgot too. It's August.
Right, we're still in off-season mode. But yeah, I mean, like he's always he had the willingness to play Quentin Byfield on wherever in the lineup. Maybe he has that same kind of mindset when it comes to Brent Clark because he's such that fluid type player that we've seen on the ice where he'll be anywhere on the ice at any time, any given moment. So hey, if there's that situation where I get an ozone face-off, you have a defense that's really tired out there, throw Brent Clark out there. Put him out there with Jordan Spence too, and maybe you see some fireworks happen. Yeah,
we have seen Hiller be able to do that a little bit. I mean, as an organization, they're a risk-averse organization when it comes to this stuff. I would argue, and I don't know if Hiller, I don't know where he falls in that yet. I mean, some of that stuff that you just mentioned seems to think he'd be a little bit more willing in game, which is good in the appropriate moments. But, he's also said some things and made some deployment that was also head scratching. So I just genuinely don't know where he will end up slotting in there and how he does it. I agree, Russ. And Randon, like, if you were to tell me that the Kings are going to squeeze Clark and Spence into top 4 roles, man, I'm here for it. I just am looking at it from the way the Kings are structured, and I just think, I mean, you're right. Like, this is what they drafted him for and all that stuff. And I think I agree with that. I think that's why he should have been here last year. So I think that we don't got to do all that this year. I think that
I mean, I'm the conductor, man. You don't have to convince me on this train.
Yeah. So, but I think Spence has equally, like, he's earned it. He's checked off every single box at every level. He did it in the AHL for 2 seasons. He checked the box in the NHL, a great season last year in the NHL. He's shown like no signs of being overwhelmed, not being ready or anything like that. So I just continue, as he continues to earn it, continue to elevate his time.
You know what? You can continue to earn your money here with DraftKings. So we're going to get to our sponsor here at DraftKings. The beautiful thing about being a sports fan, there's only like 2 days of the whole year without a game. 2. With so much happening, so much action, you can just about every day bet on a game at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting something simple like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, place your first bet. It's really could not be simpler. Do you want to bet tomorrow on the Olympics? Right now, U.S. basketball plus or minus 16 points, over-under is 188. Get those odds against Serbia here at the Olympic Games. And if you're new to DraftKings, you can just check it out. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you just bet $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or in West Virginia, visit www.1800.net. In New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY, or HOPE-NY is 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for anybody with a gambling problem, 888-789-77777, or visit ccpg.org. Pay responsibly in Boot Hills, a casino in Kansas. 21 age in jurisdiction applies. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Deposit eligibility restriction may apply. See terms and details of the gaming resources at dkng.co/base. Joe, I got it right. Hope NY.
I was waiting for it.
I've been screwing that up for all our New York people. They're probably laughing at me, but Joe's like, "Hey, man, I know you're my co-host, but you've been doing it wrong for the past 8 months, and I finally decided to tell you. So thank you, Joe. Just let me fail on open air, but finally got it done.
What I'm
Hope
here for.
NY instead of HOPENY. That's what a male friendship is. Just letting somebody a little flounder out and then just busting their testicles.
It took me so long to figure it out.
It should be. I know it's not smooth sack summer anymore because we're about to end summer, but yeah, that's a good joke there, Joe. Thank you for letting me hang out in the weeds on that. What is not in the weeds is how fans believe about this team. We're switching it over to the front office here, and The Athletic does a poll like, how do you believe in your teams? You know, the way they draft, the way their marketing is, all this kind of stuff. And the Kings heavily downgraded from the previous year. And I think that heavily stems from a certain things, and we'll get into that. Obviously, we've been critical of the team, and rightfully so. But do you think the fans are finally catching up? Do you think they led this march, or is it just itching for a championship? Joe, like, how do you feel like this vote came to be from the Athletic?
Rob Blake earned it, is what I think. And it wasn't just the fan base, by the way. Like, you look at the public, so they do the public and also Kings fans specifically. The highest grade he got from Kings fans was and I shouldn't say just the front office, but his name's on the door. Was draft and development, got a D. Everything else was a D minus. And the highest grade the public, just general hockey fans gave the LA Kings front office was a C plus. So ain't exactly roses over there. Again, I mean, it's not they are lacking still, I think, some high end skill. I think fans from the outside probably look in and say the Kings didn't sign a top 6 forward. Like, they still didn't address that in the offseason. So that's a big miss. So I think they look at that. I think they look at, the Joel Edmondson signing was atrocious. There's just no way to spin that into a positive. And so those two things right there, I think, were the biggest hits this offseason, were not addressing a top 6 scoring forward, winger more specifically, and signing Joel Edmondson and not, look at what Colorado done. Conversely, where are they ranked here? In the top 3, probably, I think. They have just committed, I think, a whopping $2 million to 2 guys that people have, fans of this podcast will know very well, and Eric Brandstrom and Oliver Shillington. Both Colorado, not a surprise when a team like Colorado does that. And so you take your shots, like you take your risks on those type of guys at no money. It's no risk. And the opportunity for them to have really good, successful seasons is right there. And conversely, you have a team like Rob Blake, who you sign a player with, there's no ceiling, it's all floor, and the floor is low, and it's you've paid a premium for it. So of course, like, you're not going to win any fan votes by doing that.
It's wild to see, because Dominic Chisholm did a great job, and I wanted to put up the things. I know it's really hard to see, so I apologize for that. But at the bottom here, you look at it, and the change from last year to this year, they were 13th last year, and now they're 31st. You look at the in terms of the fan base rankings, they're 32nd on every category: roster building, cap management, trading, free agency, vision, even total. The only thing that is not 32nd is drafting and developing, and even still, that gets a lot of flack around the LA fan base. So, yeah, I'm with Joe. I mean, a lot of this is entirely warranted, and the management shouldn't be surprised by these rankings. This is something that I'm sure they're well aware of. And you look at a lot of the criticism that happened over the last year. Yeah, a lot of it can be pointed to their mishandling of the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. There's just total epic failure by them trying to bring in this talent and then not utilizing him in the right way. And then now all of a sudden they have to fix another problem that Rob Blake has created. So the fans are just sick of it. And you can't blame them at all. And you look at some of the decisions they've made. I mean, free agency this year. I mean, yeah, there's some winners in Warren Fogle that we love, but the Joel Edmondson deal was just skewered across the nation. It was just it's widely looked at as the worst deal in free agency by a wide margin. So it's like, when you keep doing all these mistakes that, like some of these things are really good. I mean, the Alex Turcotte deal looks great. Like 3 years of the league man to see what you can get out of him. That looks great. Quentin Byfield's contract looks outstanding. You got him for 5 years, whatever, at 6.5. Man, that's gonna look great even next year. This is even Jordan Spence deal that we talked about. 2 years at only 1.5 mil for a potential top 4 defenseman in the NHL. Great. But then you have to do all these backtracks where you give Joel Edmondson that deal. And now you have Andreas Englund, and you still have a year of Andreas Englund. You have Kyle Burrows, we're talking about Brant Clark being just automatically in the lineup. Are we going to be surprised if it's Kyle Burrows and Andreas Englund on the third pair next year? I'm not going to be, just by everything that's happened over the past few years, which would be shocking to see. But yeah, like there's like I'm just like just to kind of totalize it, all this totally makes sense. It just to see the ranking and where the Kings are at 31st, and from going from last year at 13th, they earned it. I think Joe said it best. Like Rob Blake totally earned this.
Yeah, the PL deal is definitely, that was frowned upon by a lot of people, and admittedly, hey, I liked it. I was wrong. But the other thing of it is the Cal Peterson, and I refuse to give credit for getting out of deals. I don't like that. Like, unless you can do it well. Like, remember when I think I brought this up, I don't know, however long ago, when Kyle Dubas got out of the Clarkson deal in Toronto, like, didn't have to eat any money. I don't know if it was allowed then. Didn't have to eat any money, like nothing like that. He just got out of the contract, full stop. Didn't have to pay a premium, if I recall, for it. Like, look at what he paid to get rid of Cal Peterson's contract, and how much money did he really save in that, if you look at it, because we're still paying Ivan Provorov. Then everybody gave him kudos for getting out of the PLD deal. Well, you use that money you brought back Darcy Kemper's making $5 million for 3 more years. That's horrible. And then you sign Edmondson. So you took the $8 million and you gave it to Kemper and Edmondson. That's worse. So I'm sorry. Like, I'm not going to give him credit for getting out of bad deals that he created, unless he was able to do it, in an impressive way, which he wasn't, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, what is there to be, if you're a fan of the front office, what faith do you have? Because, like, and maybe this is going to be controversial, not going to give him a whole lot of credit for signing RFAs. Like, you have all the control, more or less. Like, maybe Byfield has started to gain a little bit of leverage last year, but the way he ended the season really kind of cooled and probably tempered some things to maybe help keep that where it was, right? Because he kind of went on that stretch there where he didn't score at all. Everybody's wondering if he's going to get to 20, blah, blah, blah. Again, I was still willing to go long-term, whatever for him. But the Turcotte thing and the Spence deals, these are not hard deals. These are zero leverage RFAs. So I'm sorry, I'm just not giving them credit for deals those are easy deals. I'm sorry. Like, they have no leverage. Some of these RFAs, the only one that started to, again, was Byfield. And that became a conversation because he's like your hopefully for them, like their generational player talent for the next, decade or whatever. So that one's a little bit tougher. And I do think, all things considered, navigated that well. I will credit him there. That's kind of where it ends for me, I think. I don't know if you guys agree with that assessment, or if I should be.
I'm higher than team assessment, I think, or the fan assessment. And John Miller's coming in here saying, like, a lot of the fan base is soured on the Fiala trade. I think that is absolute horse piss. Like, Fiala is a point per game player. We needed offense. Fans need to stop trying to win every single trade. If you win your part of the trade, you won the trade. Like, Faber being a player for Minnesota does not affect Fiala being a player for us. And Fiala is a point per game player for this offense, who we need to. Is he executed as well as he could be with our 1-3-1? No, probably not. But he's still a point per game player. So people need to stop, like, oh, do we win this trade? Who cares? We won our side.
Teams got what they want.
We won Fiala. If Faber got his thing in the first, most people can't even tell who the first was, let alone this. All they're seeing is Faber got a new contract, and they're doing all this kind of stuff. I've been critical of Blake, but I think that you look at, like, the trades, like, trade was a D-. His trade back and still getting the player that he wanted and getting a goalie in the second round, great trade. I think he got Tanner Jeannot. I think second was a little rich, but I think it's a player that this team will need. I think we need a little more grit on the forward thing. So I'm not saying that he's a B or an A or anything like that, but D- seems a little low. I think this whole off season has been a C. It's been It's been a meh. It's been a, like, I don't care. Like, that's why maybe a lot of fans like this podcast have kind of just taken some weeks off. And I get that, because it's not like, hey, we know what this team is. This team's a playoff team. We know that this team is good enough to make the playoffs. Is it good enough to take the next round? We don't know, because a lot of that has to come to do with our young talent. And we're not excited about the moves being made. So we're just a meh. And so D for the fan side is just frustration, I believe. And it probably should be closer to a C grade, because this team is just in the weeds. But I think I just think this team needs to decide what we want to do. They bring in high offensive talent in Fiala, who needs creativity, and then we put him in a system that has zero creativity. You have Kempe, who is a winger who dominates the rush, and we have zero rush towards the end of the season. We have no power play creativity. We continue to do hey, let's have an offensive guy with a defensive guy on the blue line. Like I think we have zero identity. The team thinks we have an identity, but I think we have zero identity, and we have a bunch of players who can play individually, but they can't play together.
I think
I think there's been signs of it. Obviously, early last year was great, and early or late in the year we had some spurts. I think the team has got to get some sort of identity and belief in creativity. You have Kempe, who's one of the best wingers, Fiala, yada, yada, yada. You sign Byfield to be your captain. You have two defensemen who are beautifully orchestrated to be offensive defensemen who can dictate pressure on the blue line, and yet you're not willing to give them the keys to the castle. I think this all comes from the up top, and maybe that's the frustration, is that the up top unit of the LA Kings, whether it be the coach or the front office, will not give over to the new style of playing hockey without holding something back. And I don't know about everybody else. Joe, you're married. Russ, you're about to be married. In order to do that, you have to give yourself to somebody. You have to give yourself completely to that person. And I don't think the Kings are willing to give themselves to the players that they have and they brought in. They believe that they can do that. They bring these players because they see the future, but they're not willing to execute that future. And I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of this, maybe this goes along with what you're saying, the frustration from the fans looks to be like a lack of direction. I think people were expecting change, and none of the moves this offseason have signaled change. It signaled exactly the same, right? Edmondson is just the same as Edler. It's just the same as Englund. Fogel, who we like. I think he's a nice player, but he's another solid, good middle six player who's going to fit in really nicely in this lineup, but not the high end, high level scorer that the team is kind of needing. So I think that is where a lot of the frustration comes into play. I want to go back to a comment that John Miller made about Faber can be a foundational piece. Fiala's 20-30 goal scorer. I think we need to sometimes remember, like, at the time that trade was made, the Kings what did they have offensively? Outside of
Doughty, Spence, Clark, Faber.
Well, forward, like in of the actual roster, right?
Okay.
Fiala.
Yeah. Like they were missing a legitimate top.
I mean, we've been talking about that for 10 plus years as Kings fans. For a top line winger,
right? They had a bunch of two-way players, and they, a lot of them they still do. You needed a player like this, and at the time, the right side of the Kings D, as you just started to rattle off there, Randon, had Doughty, Matt Roy, well established. Walker was there, but I think we all, knew that he was probably going to be on the odd man out. And you still had Dursey, Brant Clark, Jordan Spence. I, at the time, was very high on Helge Grans. That hasn't worked out.
I was too.
But there was a gluttony of right shot D. So when you see a player like of Kevin Fiala's ilk available, Faber was at least 2 seasons away, which I think this was season 2, like this was 2 years away. So
we traded him in his freshman year.
And at the time he was one of a handful of right shot defensemen, and I think they dealt from a position of strength. And I think that in order to do that. Now, I think if you want to make the case that why did they target Fiala if he's not the type of player that's going to fit with the way they play, that's a fair question, I guess. But Fiala's a great player. And I continue to push back. Like, I don't understand. I just think it's because he's in LA. If I'm being honest with you, like Fiala's freaking incredible.
If Fiala was playing with Connor McDavid, he'd
didn't
have
play
140
anybody.
points.
Like what? Like if he was
playing with Austin Matthews, he'd have 140 points.
If he was in a different market, the amount of press he'd get, he's so good. So I think you're right that Faber signs the contract and good on him. I mean, he had a really good rookie season, and hey, it looks like he's going to be a player. But I never had an issue with that, and I don't know. I don't understand why people would sour on Kevin Fiala. I think he's a great player. So I don't know. That's all. At the time they were dealing from a position of strength. Now, obviously, that position of strength is no more. So that makes it sting a little bit more. But the fact that Faber goes on to have a good season and heck, a good career, I don't know why that matters. If Kevin Fiala is doing what you expect him to do, and he's being, the team's best player, best skilled player, best playmaker, and I think he is. If he's not, he's in the top 2. So I'm good with it.
I think the one area I push back on that fans have a big gripe with the Kings about is the drafting and developing, because I feel like a lot of it has kind of been stalled by some of these young prospects actually making an impact on the roster. I mean, how long we've been waiting for Alex Turcotte to do something? Mm-hmm. I know injuries have kind of hampered him. Same thing with Akil Thomas. I mean, but you look at a lot of these players that are really making impacts on the Kings. They were all drafted and developed by the Kings. I mean, Mikey Anderson is top line defenseman for the Kings for the last few years. Quentin Byfield is looking like, that was kind of a slam dunk at 2 overall, but even then he's looking like a great player, and he had his moments kind of waiting to get his time in the NHL, and that seems to have worked out. I mean, even Jordan Spence now that we're talking about, he was a 4th, 5th round pick. Matt Roy was a 7th round pick. Brock Faber, he was drafted by the Kings, and he turned out to be a great player, and he was a 2nd round pick. So you have a lot of players that were drafted and developed that are making real impacts, not only on the Kings, but all over across the NHL. So maybe you can push, that's where trades are maybe the issue. But this is the year that we're finally going to see that top prospect pool that we talked about for so much really come to the forefront for the Kings. Because you have so many players, 7 to 8 players on this roster now, which I'll have to double check. That's got to be one of the highest the Kings have had in quite some time, that are now going to make huge, or going to be looked at to make meaningful impacts and be productive for this Kings lineup. Alex Laferriere is being talked about as a first-line winger. He's only 22 years old. I mean, you have Alex Turcotte is probably going to center the 4th line. Akil Thomas, Quentin Byfield, he's 21, 22 years old. And then you look at the defensive side, you have Brent Clark and Jordan Spence, both young players that are now. And Mikey Anderson, he's still 24, 25 years old himself. So this is the year, and we've been waiting for so long for this year to finally show up, but this will be the year where we see that prospect pool that was like number 1 in the athletic pool and elite prospects and all that we talked about for so much. This will be the year that we finally see whether they actually come to fruition or not.
You know what comes to fruition? Getting some therapy with BetterHelp. BetterHelp is here for your needs in therapy. And this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I always wonder, hey, do I need to talk to somebody? Do I need to bounce some things off of people? BetterHelp is for that. They're online. They're ready to go. You can choose. If you don't like the therapist for the first time, you can choose somebody else and pass it over. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way that I do. Sometimes, you just need to get some things out. So, the BetterHelp sponsorship here is when your schedule is packed and with either kids' activities or big work projects or more, it's easy just to let your priorities slip for yourself. Even when you know what makes you happy and it's hard to make time for it. But when you're ready to go, we feel you have no time for yourself and non-negotiables. Therapy is here for you. I know I have had a chance to sit down with a therapist and share certain things, but you guys need to as well. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designated for convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. We all might need therapy if the team does not play the lines like we want us to here at Hockey Royalty, but we have plenty of time to think about that. I think this team, in the way that fans, we just want execution. We just want the draft to be executed. We want the trades to be execution. I think, and there's a lot of fans in the chat right now that are saying, "Hey, I'm down on the Fiala trade," which I think is one of the better trades. You know what I mean? So I think every fan wants success, and winning cures all. Let's round this up with the Jordan Spence and the way the team is executing everything. What is success for you guys this season? Before we get into training camp, before we get all those news and everything, going into flatline, what is success in the season for the LA Kings, Russ?
That's a great question, because I think it's funny, because I think this that rating that we're talking about and the fan voting, a lot of that was based off the expectations going into last season, right? I mean, you make that PLD trade and everything that Rob Blake talks about, especially losing the Oilers last 2 years in the first round. I mean, fans were just expecting, like, okay, this is the year. And if that doesn't happen, then it's total failure, which kind of seemed like, I mean, even if it didn't happen, it didn't seem like a failure. But the way, I guess, it happened made it look like a lot worse. So, yeah, this year, I think if you lower those expectations back a little bit, which I talked about a podcast or two ago, which it sucks to say based off of all the things and moves that Rob Blake has made and this team has made in the past. But now that you have this youth movement coming to the forefront with players I've mentioned like Byfield, LaFerriere, Turcotte, Thomas, Bryant Clark, Jordan Spence on the back end. I mean, this is if those players can be productive and start to showcase their abilities and their talents and maybe live up to some of that potential, I think that could show and be like a pretty – I'd be really happy in terms of how this year ends up if those players perform where I at least hope they perform. I mean, if it ends up being another first-round loss, hopefully it's not to the Oilers, but you get a really solid year out of Turcotte, a really solid year out of Thomas. The Ferrier looks like he's taking a step. Clark and Spence are doing their thing on the back end. I mean, I think fans start to look at maybe we got a little bit of a future here now growing in LA, because after that, like if those players don't pan out, then it's like, okay, then what? And that's where the real problems come into play. So if we start to see that youth movement make that impact that we're all hoping they make, I'd be happy. And I think that'd be a pretty good year for the Kings.
I'm definitely pouring cold water on that. I think it's a sound and it's a reasonable thought. My only thing is that is not at all what the Kings have said the last couple of seasons. So you don't get Rob Blake doing his performance with pounding the table in that offseason, acting all mad, to have a moral victory type of season with young guys playing well. The Kings need to get out of the first round for this to be a successful season. Now, it doesn't mean they don't got to win a cup, nothing like that. But I just don't think that that's where the Kings are at, because I don't think if that's where they were at, Russ, I don't think they signed Joel Edmondson. I think they lean more into the youth movement, and they don't sign him for a half decade or however long they freaking signed him for. You know what I mean? Like, I think that was a deal to me that shows, all right, we just need that anchor on that bottom pair, that defensive stalwart that's going to help us get past the Edmonton Oilers who continue to skate around us type of thing. Like, we need better defense there. Like, that's how I think, if you look at it too, like the young guys, they're all filling depth roles. Like Turcotte, Thomas, probably fourth line. Clark, probably third pair. We've talked about how I think they're capable, but like, it's not as if there's this youth movement and they're being pushed into like big time minutes in the lineup. Byfield is
Yet.
Who?
Yet. They might.
They might, but again, this has not been a team that has historically shown the willingness to really do that. I don't think. Now, Byfield obviously is still very young, but like he's kind of. I don't look at him as like that prospect guy. You know, like he's an established NHL player now. He's at a big boy contract that he's got. Now you have to, right?
But what if he's a 65.2C? Last year What if he? I mean, Dano was a 50-point player as 2C. What if he's 65 point?
Yeah.
What if one of those players in a kill? Like, I understand what you're saying is that you want to temper expectations. I'm saying that.
I think Joe wants to raise expectations. I want to.
No. You're tempering what people should think about the team, but you think that the team should raise their own expectations.
I think that
maybe I don't know what you think.
The Kings, I believe the Kings are not going along the lines of Russ. Is where I'm getting at here. I think the Kings, they want to win a playoff round, and they think this is the best way to do it.
It's just so weird. That's so weird because you look at the roster, and everyone would say they agree that this roster's worse, right?
But they didn't have any money. They don't have a lot of money to do so. So look at what they spent the money on. They spent the money on Darcy Kemper because they needed to fix the goaltending problem. That wasn't a problem, by the way. Then they go and sign Joel Edmondson to a big contract. You don't sign that guy to that contract if you're like in transition.
Got pennies.
Oh, don't remind me. Don't remind me.
Well, so, you're on a rant. I want to fuel you.
So like I think like, okay, so Turcotte's going to play some fourth line, probably, right? Thomas is going to play some fourth line. Like, so that was Grundstrom, Anderson Dolan, Blake Lizotte. Like, so I think they're like, we can fill those guys at cheaper cost is what they're looking at. You know, you go get Tanner Jeannot to bring a little bit of a different element. So like, I don't think you're like the thought that you have, Russ, is like out of left field by any means. It's just, I really don't think that's where the Kings are at. I don't think Rob Blake gets up there, puts on his show about how mad he is and we got to get uncomfortable, only to say, wow, we don't really think it's not important for us to win a playoff round. Absolutely not. I just don't think that. So I agree that it'd be nice if we can see these. I'd like to see the team take a different direction, but that's not going to happen. So I'm past that. Like, they're not going to go in the direction that the modern NHL is going. Okay. So for the Kings to have a successful season, they need to win a playoff round. How can they either miss playoffs or make it and lose in the first round for the fourth year in a row and have anybody? Like, are we really going to sit here and say, well, Quentin Byfield had 65 points and Turcotte scored 20 goals, but we missed the playoffs, or we didn't get out of the first round for the 11th straight season? I just don't think they're here for moral victories anymore. I think that's where the organization is.
There we go.
100% agree.
We're not here for moral victories, and you're 100% right. And I think that we all want the small victories of the 65 points for Byfield, or leading a second pair, or Turcotte finally getting his flowers and being a consistent contributor, yada, yada, yada. But Gwen here is saying it best. Expletive. Like, let's win some games. Let's win some games when they count. Like, this team has been brought in, and I don't know if it's just the way we view hockey, that the Kings don't view hockey, but Jim Hiller was meant to be this guy that moves lines around. Maybe he is the type of coach that needs to get this offense rolling. Obviously, you signed Rob Blake, signed some guys that we don't agree with, but kind of win some games. We got to win some games in June or wherever the first round is for Hockey May, because I'm tired of being the foot mat. I'm tired of being, hey, look, we're trying to get some stuff here. You know what? The last couple of years, we've been waiting for a prospect to arrive. Byfield has arrived. Brant Clark and Jordan Spence has arrived. We might have some other people who have arrived. Like, let's win some games. Let's win some games. Let's put our male member on the table and like dictate the Pacific. Like I just don't. That's what I want a successful season to be. And moral victories is the perfect thing that you said, Joe, because I'm tired of those.
Yeah, I think if Rob Blake really wanted to go the direction where we're trying to build a winning team, he could have made some trades. I mean, you have some young players that are definitely could be assets and certain assets. I mean, they don't have money for it, but I mean, there's ways to move money around and make trades. I mean, you can't look at. I mean, I'm the biggest Alex Ferrier fan. You can't look at this roster and say Alex Ferrier is going to be your first line winger and say, okay, we're better than they were last year. We can beat the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, we're pretty much looking at being the sparring partner for the Oilers before they get to the big boys in the Western Conference again. That's what this roster looks like. So, I mean, my thought process behind this is like, if this man, like, if they don't make the playoffs, which would suck, obviously it's horrible. Rob Blake's probably, I don't expect him to go anywhere. If he was going to be fired, it would have happened this past year.
Right.
I mean, last year was one of the worst years in this Kings history. And
this is his last year of his contract, though.
Is this next one's the last year?
This year is his last year.
Yeah, I mean, but even still, then just because the contract is still there doesn't mean. I mean, Todd McClellan had one more year left on his deal. He was fired mid-season. I mean, this is we could say like all the great things that Rob Blake has done with the Kings and his franchise as a player, but this is a results-oriented business. You have to bring results. You can't just base it off of your history with the franchise. I'm with you, Joe. You have to win games. But the way that this management has built this team this year, I just don't see a team that can win games.
Oh, yeah.
Is the only, and that's where I guess it's realistic expectations. Sure. I feel like in my mindset is where I just don't see this team being able to beat an Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs in the first round. So that's why I look at, okay, let me get a good year out of Byfield. Let me get something out of Clark, LaFerre, and all that. And then I'll be like, okay, that was a good year for that.
I think John Miller is hitting the nail on the head here. Trying to win with this roster, he says, gets us closer to the second round, but farther away from the Stanley Cup.
Perfect.
Because, yes, like I think for the Kings, they need to win the first round. Like as an organization, they need to win in the first round. But like this roster can't win a cup. And maybe I'll be on freezing cold takes. Like in next June,
I hope you are, because that would mean a cup, right?
But like, there's a clear, misjudging of how to construct a team that Rob Blake is totally not with the current times. So to John's point, like if they were to win the playoff round, that could be the vote of confidence that of like, hey, this could be the way, and it's not. So I agree with John that like in order for the Kings to have a successful season, they need to win in the first round. But that could equally be just a horrible thing for the direction of this franchise, because it could mean them buying into
the way they think,
the way they construct this roster. Because I don't think they're winning the second round. And that's where I'm at.
No, I agree, Joe. I think Rob Blake is kind of tying his timeline, I guess, or shelf life to the contract, to Andre Kopitar's contract. I feel like if they don't do anything in these next 2 years, okay, he's done. He's
right.
Gone. Which, because what I talked about earlier, I mean, you're now all of a sudden getting all these this youth movement now. He's just throwing them all into the lineup. Like this is the year. Okay. Well, you're probably not going to win doing that, because you're getting a lot of young players now playing in positions that they've never really played before. And you haven't really given like top line. You haven't really brought in real established talent to build this team to be a winner in the playoffs. But maybe you get some good experience out of this year, and then you look at the salary cap and the amount of cap space they have next year is like a ton. They have a ton of cap space next year. So I wonder if this is the year that they say, okay, let's try to get some experience for these young players, and then next year we try to find some real established talent in free agency or some trades and really go after it. But I'm with you, Joe. Like if they don't win a playoff or they don't make the playoffs, I'm saying this right now, but come April, May, at the end of the season next year, I'm going to be like, all right, everybody's got to go. Like we're over it. Like I guess it all depends on how the season ebbs and flows,
sure.
Right? I mean, because last year it was a horrible season, and they still got 99 points. It's like the top 10 in points in the franchise history, but it was just a terrible season. So I guess it's really about how the season goes.
Yeah, I think it's just tough, and I know a lot of fans are, hey, we just trust the ship. And I think at some point you need to trust the ship, but I think also you need to push back because it's tough. And not all great players are great managers, and not all great players are great GMs. They're different. They're different things. And I would just say it's an interesting season because I think there could be a lot to be happy for with what Russ said, with a lot of the young players that we've been waiting to take that next step. I mean, if Byfield takes that next step, if Clark and Turcotte all take that next step, those are the players we've been wanting to take that step for a long time. So I think fans will be happy with that. But I also think that winning a playoff series is not good enough. I think the real step will be Western Conference Finals. That would be a real step. Like, hey, okay, well, Rob Blake, I didn't agree with you, but we won the Western Conference Finals. This team is gritty. This team is forechecking, back-checking, pay-checking, whatever you want to say. And we gritted it to the Western Conference Finals. Then, yeah, tip my cap. But winning one playoff series versus a team that may not be the Edmonton Oilers is not good enough for me. So that's how I feel it.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. Like, as you mentioned something earlier, like I think we've been, like I think you said something to the effect of like, but trusting in the brass and like letting them see through. Like, I think we've been pretty fair. Like a couple of years ago, we were pumping Rob Blake's tires with some of the moves that were made. Like the moves he made with Toronto to bring in the likes of Trevor Moore, and he brought in, the draft picks and Dursey. Like he made some really, really good moves. We praised that Mikey Anderson deal when he signed it. I was a big fan of the Trevor Moore signing when he signed that. I think he saw there's like, so I think we've been pretty fair that like when he has done a lot of good things that we've given him his praise, but the whole thing is like, how do you take the team now from building to built? And now we're taking that next step to being a contender of sorts, whether that's a Western Conference contender, whether that's a Pacific Division contender, or whether that's a Stanley Cup contender, not just eke into the playoffs and be out in the first round, like this is a team that can do damage. And he has dropped the ball all over the place. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Inside Out. And I forget Joy. She's holding those like the
memories,
and she just fumbles them all over the place. That's Rob Blake, trying to take this team to the next level, right? Like he's just struggling with that right now. Maybe she finds the bag that the elephant guy got him, and she can put him in the bag, and he can get it going, and they're going to be fine. But so far, it's hard to trust that.
I'm gonna hold you to a Pixar reference every episode now.
Well, with the kids, maybe I got a shot.
There we go. We got a shot at having great fans all year round. So thank you guys for coming in tonight. We really appreciate you guys. First episode in a while, kicking off the dust, getting a little summertime breeze going on here. We would always do, getting our articles at hockeyroyalty.com. For all our articles, check it right in there on our own website. You can follow us on Twitter at hockey_royalty, at Random Commando 24, at NHL Russell, at JW Paterino, at Kopitar 4HOF. DraftKings code THPN. If you want some therapies, we're sponsored by BetterHelp. Go on our website, get 10% off right now. Interesting season coming up here for everybody. We're going to be covering it maybe every week, every other week in the summertime, but every week definitely during the season. Thank you guys for joining in tonight. And as always on this podcast, go Kings go.